Coming up next on Crimson Tide Kickoff, it's a showdown of top 10 foes in Tuscaloosa. Will the Tide maintain their dominance, or will the Gators get their revenge?
We're winners. You know, we have a mindset and an expectation of winning every time we step out there on Saturday.
What new wrinkle does Florida have in their offense? What did Bama learn from their narrow escape at Arkansas? And what is the Gators' plan for stopping the Tide's top 2 runners? Also ahead, he led Alabama back to national prominence in the 90s. Coach Gene Stallings joins us live to talk about the big game as well as a big honor for him. Plus, a heartwarming account of how 2 Tide football players made a difference in the life of a longtime Alabama fan. It's Crimson Tide Kickoff.
Can't survive without it.
And it starts right now.
Live from the campus of the University of Alabama, this is Crimson Tide Kickoff with Gary Harris and John Huddleston. Brought to you by AT&T and by Alpha Insurance.
Well, after 2 weeks away, Bryant-Denny Stadium will once again be filled with 100,000 plus fans this evening, the majority of which, of course, will be wearing crimson. It's the Tide and the Gators in another top 10 showdown, and we're breaking it all down for you over the next hour. Hello again, everybody, and welcome in to Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Gary Harris alongside John Huddleston. Crimson Tide Kickoff is presented by Alpha Insurance and AT&T, the official wireless communications provider for Crimson Tide Athletics. AT&T, rethink possible.
Gary, we've got a big show lined up today. Coach Gene Stallings, the former Alabama coach, just walked in the building. He'll be on this very set in just a few moments. Also today, we'll be talking live with Gainesville Sun columnist Pat Dooley. He'll give us the Gators perspective, and Eric Stinnett of CrimsonConfidential.com will also be along today, so a big show on tap.
Absolutely, John, but first we are going to be breaking down today's game. Now, this will be the first time since 2006 that Alabama and Florida have met in the regular season. Now, it's not quite as big a stage as the SEC championship game, but still, there is a lot on the line, including everything from postseason implications to staying undefeated to program prestige and pride. To borrow a term usually associated with baseball, you could call this Alabama-Florida game the rubber match.
You know, 08, they got the best of us. 09, we ended up getting the best of them. And whether or not we see them again down the road, that doesn't matter. You know, we're worried about this one right now.
The Gators have had 10 months to think about their loss in the SEC championship game, and it's expected that they'll enter this contest just as Alabama did the SEC championship game in 2009, with a chip on their shoulder.
I just remember how we approached the Florida game when they beat us. So if they have any kind of the same mindset that we had when they beat us as they do when we beat them, then it's going to be real intense out there.
That's really all we thought about all year. So, we know Florida's going to come in here extremely intense and ready to play.
Florida coach Urban Meyer says that the Gators even considered devoting extra time in August to prepare for the October showdown.
We even had discussion about should we have a week in training camp for Alabama. Should we take a day a week to have a Alabama day?
But Meyer ultimately opted not to proceed down that path. But you can rest assured Bama was on the minds of his players as they remembered the one blemish to an otherwise perfect season.
It was embarrassing, and all our young guys, they understand what Florida's all about, and it's all obviously about winning championships. So they know this is the biggest game of the year. This is a championship game.
Definitely has that kind of feel to it because it's Alabama, and we're definitely going to bring up the intensity this week in practice, and definitely bring the intensity on to Tuscaloosa.
Some facts regarding the Alabama-Florida series for you. Now, Alabama leads 20-14, but that would be a little bit more on the Tide side, 21-14, but the lopsided victory in 2005 had to be vacated. And is there really a home field advantage in this series? In games played in the state of Florida, Alabama dominates the Gators 10-2, but in games played in Alabama, the series is split at 9 wins apiece. And in games played in Georgia, we're talking about the SEC championship game, Florida leads 3-2. John?
And Gary, Alabama enters tonight's game looking for their 29th consecutive regular season victory. Now, Win number 28 did not come easy at all. Against Arkansas, the Tide found themselves trailing by 10 at halftime. But following intermission, Alabama's defense came up with the turnovers and the offense began to execute. Bama would rally to the 24-20 victory. Still, though, Nick Saban wants his players to remember what could have been.
You know, you hope that people can learn lessons and not have to go through horrible experiences to do it. Everybody's sort of willing to change when something bad happens. A lot of people aren't willing to change when good things are happening. Hopefully we'll have the maturity to be able to learn from the adversity that we had to overcome.
Meanwhile, after some early season struggles, couldn't snap the ball, offense had trouble scoring points, the Gators seem to have hit mid-season form last week. Meet Trey Burton. The Florida freshman stepped into the game, lined up at fullback, quarterback, receiver, and tight end. Burton went on to score a school record 6 touchdowns.
Well, first of all, it starts with the offensive line, and they played an unbelievable game. I think they all had some type of little injury, you know, and they fought through it, and there's some tough dudes, and they played an unbelievable game.
Guy's a very good player. It does create some problems, but, you know, it creates more problems when you got one guy who can do it all because you really can't, you have to defend it all the time.
And be sure to hang around later in the show. How do the computers think the Tide and Gators will play out? We'll show you one simulation that places the two SEC heavyweights at each other's throats. Gary?
Well, John will also update you on the availability of several players on both teams who may be nursing injuries or may not be able to play in the game for other reasons. But first, we're going to turn our attention to your game day weather. Meteorologist Richard Scott is standing by. Richard.
Hey, Gary, it's a little chilly out here this morning. Temperatures starting off in the 40s, had to throw on the jacket to stay warm. Well, temperatures will gradually warm up today, and we're talking a nice game day forecast. Let's show you that in the quick cast today. 69 degrees by 10 o'clock this morning. Lots of sun all day long by noon, around 75, 81 degrees to wrap things up this afternoon. And temperatures will quickly take a tumble. Later on this evening, we'll have the game day forecast, of course, and much more. Gary and John will have that coming up in weather.
Well, thank you, Richard. Coming up next on Crimson Tide Kickoff, presented by AT&T and Alpha Insurance. Florida is calling it the heavy package, a defensive scheme designed to stop the run, or at least slow down Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson. The question is, will it work?
And still to come, he was the head coach when the Tide won the national championship in 1992. Coach Gene Stallings will join us live to talk about a number of topics. You're watching Crimson Tide Kickoff, presented by AT&T and Alpha Insurance.
And welcome back to Crimson Tide Kickoff for week number 5, presented by AT&T and Alpha Insurance. A big key in today's game will be who wins the battle of the running game. You know, running is always important in the Southeastern Conference. And not long after the Tide gouged Florida in last year's SEC championship game, Urban Meyer and the Gators defensive staff started working on ways to better slow down the run game. And here's what the coach and his staff came up with. They call it the heavy package. Basically, it's a 5-2 type scheme where they put an extra down lineman up front to try to jam the line of scrimmage. But is this really something that's new, or is it something that's been around for a while?
They have done it before, and we do it all the time, and we practice against it every day.
So Nick Saban saying that it's really not anything new at all. The so-called heavy package was effective 2 weeks ago for the Gators against Tennessee. Florida held Torian Poole to just 23 yards, but Urban Meyer calls facing Heisman Trophy winner Mark Ingram and his partner in crime, Trent Richardson, a completely different challenge for their defense, and there's no doubt about that, John.
And Gary, some big-time players have had some availability issues leading up to tonight's game. Running back Jeff Dumps has a sprained left foot and was unable to go full speed in practice on Thursday. Coach Urban Meyer still remains hopeful that he'll play. Wide receiver Chris Rainey, meanwhile, is currently not part of the team. That according to Meyer. Rainey was arrested earlier this season for aggravated stalking, and Alabama defensive lineman Marcel Darius is expected to play after injuring his ankle against Arkansas midweek. He was not 100%, but Coach Saban said that he was improving. And coming up next on Crimson Tide Kickoff, former Tide coach Gene Stallings joins us live right here on this very set.
That's right, and the coach will give us his thoughts on tonight's big ball game, plus he'll make his picks for the other SEC games, and of course we're going to talk to him about going into the College Football Hall of Fame. All that with Coach Gene Stallings. Stay tuned. We're coming right back.